Hi, Erisa. This is George Merlis from the uh, Los Angeles Times. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you today?
Good. Could I ask you to start by saying and spelling your name for me and telling me what it is you do in connection with Mars 2020 Perseverance?
My first name is Erisa, Erisa. Last name Stilley, Stilley. I am an EDL or Entry, Descent, and Landing Systems Engineer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And that means that I've been working with the Mars 2020 Entry, Descent, and Landing team for the last 6 or 7 years, preparing us to land the Perseverance rover on Mars.
How do you land on Mars? How does one go about? What is the procedure? Can you talk me through it?
Yes. Hmm. I like to think of it in phases. So the first phase of the mission is the launch phase, where we get off the surface of Earth and put the spacecraft on a trajectory that we can then adjust on the way to the destination. So in this case, that's Mars. The second phase is the cruise phase, where we fly the spacecraft from Mars to Earth, from Earth to Mars. And the entry, descent, landing phase is where we take over from the cruise of the mission, and we essentially take the spacecraft from a very high entry speed at the atmosphere of Mars, around 1,000 miles per hour, down to a very slow 1.7 or so miles per hour touchdown on the surface of Mars. That set of events, called entry, descent, landing, can be broken up. I mean, it's named entry, descent, landing for a reason. So entry is the first part of that, where we use the heat shield on the spacecraft to slow us down as we do what we call guided entry through the atmosphere of Mars. When we've slowed down enough, we deploy our parachute supersonically around Mach 1.7, and that allows us to continue slowing down the spacecraft enough where we can release the heat shield, and that allows the radar of the entry, descent, landing system to finally see the ground and start giving us measurements of where we are as we descend through the atmosphere. The new thing that we have deployed for the Perseverance landing specifically is called terrain relative navigation. And once we've slowed down enough and can start to take images of the surface, those images get compared to a map that we've loaded on board, so that we can get a better understanding of where we are with respect to the surface of Mars. We can then select a pre-designated safe target that when we separate the descent stage in the rover, I like to think of it as a jetpack. The last main phase is separating the rover and descent stage from the back shell, diverting away from the back shell so that we don't hit it, while we're also making our way toward that safe landing site. And then finally, the sky maneuver that people should remember as well from the Curiosity landing, where we lower the rover down on a set of bridles or ropes, set it down safely on the surface, and then cut those ropes and let the descent stage fly away and crash at a far distance on the surface.
That sounds like an awful lot of steps, but you're not really in control yourself when it's happening. Explain that to me.
Right. So because the amount of time that it takes for the entry, descent, landing phase of the mission to occur is between 6 and 7 minutes typically, and the time it takes for those signals to get back to us on Earth is more like 11 minutes. So by the time these things are happening on the spacecraft, we don't have the capability to joystick it or to react to it in real time. So we have to do everything in our power to set up the spacecraft to do a safe and successful entry, descent, landing a couple of hours before we actually enter the Martian atmosphere.
Is this landing more challenging than the last one?
It is, in that we have, this landing is more challenging in that we have selected a more challenging landing site. The new system that I mentioned earlier, terrain relative navigation, is a capability that's essentially allowed the project scientists and the project to consider landing sites that are more challenging, because we can pre-designate safe landing sites or safe landing spots within that site. that we can target once we have additional information during the landing event. Otherwise, the system is very similar in terms of the hardware and the software that we're flying to what we flew and landed the Curiosity rover with back in 2012. So there is a lot of confidence and benefit that we get from a heritage mission. But there definitely have been some new developments we're excited to deploy that have enabled us to essentially be more capable in certain ways.
You can't rehearse this here on Earth, though, can you? Because the gravity situation is so different.
By gravity situation, what do you mean?
Well, we have a lot more gravity than Mars does.
Understood. There are actually several differences in the physics of Mars compared to Earth. So it's actually more than just the gravity, but you're correct in that we can actually do an end-to-end test of the intradescent landing system here on Earth for those reasons. So we have to rely on a combination of testing that we can do on Earth, analysis that we do, and then simulations that try to model both the spacecraft itself as well as the environment that it's going to fly in on Mars, and convince ourselves with statistics for these simulations that the combination of things, the testing, the analysis, the simulations, that we think we've built and tested a system that will work on landing day.
Well, that about covers my questions. Is there anything else you think my readers should know about landing Perseverance on Mars?
There is one of the additional things that Perseverance has that we haven't flown before is a new suite of what we call EDL cameras and a microphone. So assuming that hardware works, we're not depending on it in any way for the landing to go successfully, but it is an exciting addition to hopefully get some images and sounds even of the intradescent landing sequence itself. So if that works successfully and we get those pieces of data back to us on Earth after landing, then it should be a pretty exciting opportunity for us, both as the engineers and scientists, as well as the public, to go back and see those and actually get to see with our own eyes what happened during the event.
Oh, that's great. But we won't be seeing it in real time. It'll be playback afterward, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, good luck and thank you. This is George Morales from WABC Television. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
Good. You sound fine. I'm not even going to bother to ask for a mic check. Let's just start. The Perseverance rover is approaching Mars. It's going to land in February. What happens when it lands? How does it go about landing? Because you're not on board. No astronauts are on board. It's the ultimate self-driving car, isn't it?
Yes, the spacecraft at the time that it reaches the Martian atmosphere has been prepped as well as the team can at JPL and our partnering NASA organizations. So at that point, the spacecraft is going to enter the atmosphere going 12,000 or so miles per hour. It's going to use its heat shield as it flies through the atmosphere to bleed off a lot of that energy and slow it down until we can safely deploy our supersonic parachute at around Mach 1.7. The parachute will continue to slow the vehicle down as it goes to the beginning of its descent phase. When we're going slow enough, we will release a heat shield that allows us to turn on our radar to see the ground. And then we will use our new terrain relative navigation system to take some pictures of the surface, localize those back to a map that we have on board, and figure out where we are, and then choose a pre-selected safe target or landing spot that we can then target once we drop out of the back shell. So finally, the descent stage and rover together will separate from the back shell and parachute and divert away from that hardware and toward the safe spot that we've selected. It will eventually deploy the rover in our sky crane maneuver that people may remember from the Curiosity landing to set the rover safely down on the surface. And then we will cut those ropes and let the descent stage plane crash at a safe distance on Mars.
How long does all that take?
The time it typically takes our entry, descent, and landing sequence to occur is between 6 and 7 minutes.
And I understand that this is totally autonomous. There's no way for you to control it on its way down because of the distance between Earth and Mars. Is that correct?
That's correct. We refer to the time it takes for signals to travel between Earth and Mars in one-way light time or two-way light time if you're looking at a round-trip time. That time when entry, descent, landing will be happening for Perseverance is around 11 minutes. And because it only takes 7 minutes for us to get to the ground, those events have happened and the rover has either safely landed or unsafely landed on the surface by the time that we receive a signal telling us what's happened.
JPL has had very good success landing on Mars, but it's still not parking your car parallel in a big space, is it?
That's correct. Let me think of, sorry, live interview. We have built the Perseverance landing. We have built the Perseverance landing system on the heritage of the system that we used to land the Curiosity rover back in 2012. So there's a lot of success, or I'm sorry, a lot of confidence in the success that we've had before, but the team has had to work very hard, as always, to really go back through that system, try and find what we might have missed last time, and make sure that this landing is a successful one as well. We do have some new capability on board, like the terrain relative navigation specifically, that enables us to actually go to more challenging landing sites this time around. So our Jezero crater landing site is actually considered a more hazardous site than we have historically landed in knowingly, because we have the system that allows us to do a more targeted landing in the site itself to safe areas.
And this is a tougher landing site than the one that Curiosity landed in, is that correct?
That's correct. The Curiosity landing site at Gale Crater had an area on the order of 20 by 25 kilometers that was considered relatively flat and rock-free. Jezero Crater has, in the site that we are targeting, has a delta that's on the order of 70 to 80 meters high in certain places. It definitely has areas that are strewn with rocks and areas with dunes. And so all of those features in this landing site have been analyzed and then allocated in a way in a map that we've put forward in terms of what we consider safe and not safe for the rover to land in.
We've never actually seen a landing from the point of view of the lander, but this time we will, not live, but after the fact. Can you explain that? Tell me a little bit about that.
The Perseverance landing system this time around has what we're calling the EDL camera suite. And that means that we've been able this time to put cameras on multiple places on the spacecraft so that we can catch certain events during landing. For example, we have cameras on the top of the aeroshell that are going to be able to look up in the direction of the parachute when we deploy the parachute. So we're hoping to capture images of that. We'll also have a camera on the underneath side of the descent stage that would be looking down at the rover during landing, and a camera on the rover looking back up at the descent stage. And then finally, we have a camera on the underside of the rover that can look down at the ground, which is similar to what we had during Curiosity landing. So assuming that that hardware works and that we get the images back safely or successfully after landing, then yes, we should have some very exciting photos, even some possible microphone recordings to enjoy.
That about covers my questions. Anything else you think we need to know about EDL for Perseverance?
I just want to remind people that we are landing February 18th, which might be easier to remember if people keep Valentine's Day in mind. We'll be landing the Thursday after Valentine's Day.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you. Good luck.